Recker, my brother.
Nick, my man, how you doing?
Good. Hey, I actually spoke to you this time to begin with, unlike the
I'm
Ella
very
podcast
grateful.
where I wanted to do a pod. All right, Ella was awesome, wasn't she?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah. I got
great.
emails telling me how awesome she is afterwards. She's great.
She should be doing the podcast. So this time though, it took us what we've been doing this podcast for 5 years.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
since like the very first, I don't know, our first
I
guest
think
might
at the
have been
very latest in the second ever episode we mentioned him, like very
yeah.
early on.
So no, our first guest was like Greenwood. Maybe our
Yeah,
second guest was like Young Jin, and then we of course asked our good friend Stefan Seidel, who introduced the two of us, to be
that's
on
right.
as our next guest, but he kept saying no for
Yeah.
5 years, and then
He
finally
he
he's
said
come on.
we have to hit 250,000 listeners first, and until he would speak to us.
So Stefan, why did you not come on our podcast for 5 years?
That's a really good. I was so busy. I was so busy for the last 4 years. But for real, I'm not much of a podcast person. I believe I've been on one podcast before.
Oh, nice.
Um, and
What
but
what podcast were you on?
that was something on the metaverse that our friend Corina did
Yeah.
Huh.
in Bern. But since then not. But at this point I have to. So you have 250,000 listeners at this point, like in total. I understand that, not
Yeah, yeah, probably
episode.
more to be honest. I mean, it's yeah, something like that. Yeah.
We get like 4,000 or something. You told me once listening every time.
No, more than that. Way more than that
More
by
than-
now. It keeps on growing. I don't know. Like Spotify Rap will come out next week. You know, I can share some of the details then. We'll
But
see.
that's just Spotify. So that's only one
Yeah,
platform. There's
that is one
Apple,
platform.
there's these other platforms too. I know on YouTube, it publishes on YouTube, and there's like 3 people who listen on YouTube. So nobody.
YouTube
So
is
what
not
I
a
can
big.
what I can tell you is that at conferences, and this has been going on for a couple of years now, when people speak to me, they're like, "Oh, here's a Stefan from the podcast." And I've not even been to the podcast, and then I'm like, "Yeah, but I also do research. Can we perhaps speak about my research?" Um,
Yeah, that's it. So we gotta start off with a couple of. I remember in the very early days, there was some sort of citation race. You two guys had a citation race,
We
right?
did.
I vaguely remember that, and it was sort of like first to 8,000, and I checked it just before, and I think it's there. Like, have you finished
Yeah.
the race? Who
No.
won the race? Like, what's the prize and everything?
Look, I would say that was the carelessness of the youth, and it was probably not our brightest and most clever idea to have a race and see who's the first to get 8K for whatever reason, 8K citations. And I'm not saying that because I'm not giving it to you, Nick. So Nick won. That's fair and square. That's very clear. I've been looking for scotch since then. So the
Oh, so
idea
it
is
is a
that
bottle of scotch. Well, fair enough.
whoever wins gets a really good, nice bottle of scotch. And you have to understand, Jan, Nick's giving me scotch quite a bit, so he knows good scotch. So that's a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I mean that was arbitrary. So why 8K? Why not 6K? Why
Well,
not
no, I'll tell you
15K?
why 8K. I remember this. We were in your apartment. At least this is how I remember it. And in Feldkirch, right, right near Liechtenstein, where you were a professor for a lot of years, and we were looking at our Google Scholar citations, and we both had. This was like 2012 or 2013 or something, and we both had like around 1,000 or over 1,000 or something like that. And we're like, well, but what's the number? Like, what number would you get that this means that you've arrived. This
That you're
means you are
legit.
now, yeah, you can actually sit at the table with anybody, and you are a professor who's legitimate, and you have arrived.
Well, this was before people started gaming citations, folks. I mean, like
Yeah.
8,000 is nothing these days, but back then it was a hell of a lot.
Yeah, and that's what we decided. We decided that 8,000 is that magic number. That once you hit 8,000 citations, now you're a legitimate whatever. Who knows what we thought? So then we made a bet.
We probably looked at a bunch of people who we thought were legit, and
Yeah.
8,000 was kind of where they were at that point. Yeah, but as you're saying, so at this point you could say 50,000, 100,000 because the citation game's just been incredible.
The citation game has certainly taken over, that's for
But
sure, yeah.
so Nick wins. So congratulations.
Yeah,
and
but-
I know it's important to you.
But Recker, you know this guy. You know our buddy Stefan. So Stefan's the one who introduced the two of us
That's right, yeah.
in a game of pool at Hicks, or what was
Yeah.
it? No, it was ISIS.
It was ISIS
in
in Texas, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He'd been talking about you for a long time. Yeah, I mean, like, you guys go back to the ISSTC, is that correct? Or something about this, like 2007, no? Is
No,
that
this is what happened with me. Rick Watson introduced me to
Oh,
Jan van Brocke. So I was going to be in Europe for something else, and Rick Watson, who was kind of the elder statesman of my department at Georgia, he's like, "Hey, while you're in Germany, why don't you swing by Liechtenstein? They have this really cool little group there." So he introduces me to Jan van Brocke, and I'm an assistant professor, so a couple of years into my career, and Jan JVB is like, "Oh, hi. Yeah, assistant here. Talk to my assistant professor," or whatever. So he sloughs me off on Stefan, and
That's
Stefan had to entertain me while I was in town. So
that's exactly what happened. And I can tell you that you're bringing it up. I can tell you the story of how the two of you met. If
what?
you
yeah,
I
if you
go
beat
for
remember
it.
that.
Recker in the
I
game
don't,
of
I
pool.
vaguely
Yeah,
remember
no,
it.
because it's so at least I think that's a funny story because I had known Nick for a while. I had known Jan for a longer while, and both knew you existed, but you hadn't met. And then I think there was ICIS in Fort Worth in
Yeah,
Dallas,
yeah.
and there was a social event, and
At this
uh,
kangaroo, no, not kangaroo, like the
it
cowboy
was a
saloon
huge,
thing. Yeah.
huge barbecue place with all sorts of games. That's an
Yeah,
important
true.
part of the story. And I think Nick and I we were hanging out, and then what would happen is Jan would sneak up on Nick, and you would tap in on his shoulder or something like that,
No, I
and then
hit him
you
on the bum.
and then you
He smacked me on my butt.
okay, let's take that, and then you would disappear.
I
So he
did.
would so he would turn around, and you were not there, and he was like, "Who was that?" And I said, "That was Jan Recker," and you would do it. And you would do so. This is a funny Jan moment in this story. So you would do it a couple of times, and at some point you would meet, and then you spoke about probably basketball and celebrities Jan has played basketball with, and at some point Nick said, "Jan, I'm going to beat you at any sport." And this is when the competition started. And they had all these little games like little basketball where you could throw little balls
Yeah,
into a
but I can't
basket
be
and
in
snooker.
Rutgers League in basketball.
And then you started. No, so as far as I remember for that night, Jan, you won clearly, but at some point I lost interest and I didn't pay attention anymore, so I don't know what has happened. And
I seriously don't remember much of that at all. Yeah, but yeah, that totally sounds like me, that's for sure. Oh, that's funny. But that's not why we brought you on, Stefan, right? I mean, like, this is funny, and we all go way back. I mean, you and I, we have a competition about a bottle of scotch or something like this that goes back to our study years, if you remember
What's
that.
your competition?
No, not a competition, but see, Stefan and I, we graduated at the same time, and we for some weird coincidence, we wrote the very final exam of our life together in controlling or something, right? Cost management or whatever. And, Stefan is obviously brilliant. And he came out of that and he's like, "Oh my God, I failed it." And I was like, "No, you didn't fail it." "Oh, I got a C." I said, "I swear to God, you're not going to get a C. You haven't you've never got anything worse than an A minus or something in your life. You're not going to start having C's or failing an exam right now." And he was so damn sure that I said, "Okay, we're gonna put a bet on it. I'm betting that you didn't fail and you didn't get a C in your final class." And he was really worried. And then, long story short, of course he got an A or something, right, in the final exam. He wasn't even close to a C. And and graduated with honors and everything. So yeah. So, and I think there was a night out, right? That was the bet, a night out. We've had plenty of night out, so I think we're fair and square by now.
yeah, it wasn't an A certainly that last one, but I did pass, so I made it. So that's
All right, but listen, you just threw in there that Stefan is brilliant. So people don't know Stefan, and he's a pretty humble, unassuming guy. He's not like you, Recker, who, you let the world know how great you are on a regular basis. Stefan kind of is low key. And, but I'll tell you what, this is the funny thing about when you're in Stefan's apartment and you're having a couple of drinks and maybe eating and whatever. He has a whiteboard that he will pull out next to the dining table in order to put down his scholarly thoughts while you're having your conversation. He'll whiteboard ideas in his dining room, right? Who does that? Nobody does that.
And you have a knack. That's certainly true. You have a knack for writing like truly very beautiful, great papers. I mean, anyway, and I think that's why we brought you in, right? We want to talk about your regulation paper, where Nick always has said from the start, this is going to be, best paper award winner for sure.
Yeah. Well, I saw this paper before it was published, right? And all right, it's a beautiful. So I have two cons. So you have this paper. It's regulating emerging technologies, and it's the story of how the country of Liechtenstein, the state of Liechtenstein, decided to regulate blockchain.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story, and there are a couple hilarious things about this paper. One of which is if you look at who he interviewed, they have this table and it lists all the people they interviewed. The last interview on the table is Prime Minister of the country. name another name another MISQ paper where Prime Minister of a country was one of the interviewees, right?
Yeah, good. That's true. Yeah.
How long was that interview with the Prime Minister, Stefan? What was like? Did you actually talk to? Did this person know anything about blockchain? Like,
We absolutely yes, and we did speak to the prime minister. I can look it up in the paper. It's probably going. It was an hour or something, but
mhm.
he was the one who supported the entire initiative of regulating blockchain technology at that time. And I should perhaps provide a little more of context. So this is a co-authored paper with my colleagues Christoph Frick, who's in Liechtenstein, and Jan from Brocke, who's at this point in Münster. And it's one of these single, in-depth, and I like to think of it as a revelatory case study because we had access to some very unique case. And
You
we
actually
inter
write unique case study, right? So your
uh,
argument is not revelatory. You're saying like this is a pretty freaking unique case, and given that you have the Prime Minister of Minister and the Prime Minister of Liechtenstein, you can make that argument, right? It's kind of special.
So I believe this is one of the things that reviewers got immediately interested in, and the editors as well. So we had a very interesting data set. We didn't interview too many people. I believe we had 20 respondents, and some of them we interviewed a couple of times. But they were the key stakeholders in the process of constructing the law. So when we look at qualitative papers at this point, you sometimes see like 50 or 100 or more interviews. But in this case, we literally had access to most people who were relevant in the entire process. And the second thing that we had was documents. So we had access to not only the final law text and like public communications, but strategy papers, the various different versions of the law. We even had annotations where we could see how people argued for when they made a change. So we got some insight into the rationale behind that.
I mean, it's
Um,
even in the paper, Stefan, right? There's this beautiful image where you have like it looks like a sketch on a piece of paper or something, right? Or like a scribbling, right? From the process, it's an image in the paper.
Yeah, that's the image of what's called the token container model, where the idea is that a token is a container of collections of rights, and that was the original drawing. And the person who gave us access to that, well, allowed us to actually put it in the paper, and it's a central artifact
Yeah,
from that
cool.
process. Yeah.
So
So I'll tell you
how
what.
is it interview? Sorry, just one question. Like, how is interviewing the prime minister? I mean, like just operationally, like you go through three secretaries and you schedule an appointment 3 months from now, and then I guess you suit up. Like, how does it even work?
So first of all, Liechtenstein is probably different than larger countries. It's so the way they like to frame it is we have much closer ways, so it's easier to actually speak to people. And one important aspect of this paper is that one of our co-authors was a government advisor at this point. And
Yeah,
that is
Christoph.
important to note because so first of all, that comes with certain issues about like positionality of the researcher and making sure that they can act as an observer. And we're trying to address it by involving multiple analysts, like he and we analyze the data, and we're reflexive. We were reflexive, and we're trying to create as much transparency as we can about the process. But on the other hand, this is what's giving you access. So
Yeah.
this unique data set was possible because of that. And it's something that we're trying to be fairly, clear about in the paper. And yeah, that's how we got access. And then you go to their office and you interview them, and it's a normal interview. That's how it works. And
Nice.
we had other very interesting people, like the ones who were responsible in the regulatory agency, legal scholars who were involved in the process, corporate representatives, people who were very early engaged in the blockchain ecosystem.
So was it more legal people or techie people? Like how much did they really know about blockchain? Like I'm thinking government officials. I've seen some of these people. I know some legal people. These are not the people that necessarily understand how decentralized databases work. So what a smart contract is or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the earlier you are in the process, the more ambiguity is there in terms of there's just a few people who really know how this works. And in this particular case, there were technical experts who did have an inside understanding. They knew the technology inside out. And then there were legal folks that did not have that same understanding. So early in the process, it was about creating a shared understanding of what everyone's talking about. So the earlier stages of the project a lot about what is it that we're doing here? What are the actual goals that we're pursuing? And so sense making in order to create a shared mental model.
Yeah. And I mean, when I read the paper, it's like, it is kind of a learning. It's what's the result of a learning process, essentially. These are folks who are regulators. And then what do they need to do? As the more they learn, they realize we're not going to, we're not going to regulate blockchain. We're going to regulate this abstracted idea of blockchain, right? So that abstraction idea, I think, is the thing that I take away most. There's a process of abstraction and elaboration. So anyway, the paper's cool. It's a very cool paper. It's about regulating emerging technologies, which I think is a huge, huge issue. And I think this is a foundational paper at the moment for thinking about that. Because even in your very first sentence, you say AI, blockchain, you list some other technologies. And that's just it. This is the issue of our time. As these technologies keep unfolding and they're unfolding faster and faster and they're more indeterminate, how are we going to regulate it? How are we going to
I mean,
stay
it's not an issue of our time. It's one of these classic, we talk about this sometimes, it's a classic persistent problem. It will never go away. Technological cycles will always be faster than regulatory cycles. We always have the problem that we need to regulate something that in the process of regulating it will change. And, we don't really know what we're regulating when we begin regulating it. Isn't that the issue? And that's a timeless issue.
Yeah.
In general, I would say yes, except for there's a difference in how short these cycles are, how fast they occur, and also that technology is becoming a regulatory instrument in itself.
Yeah, that's
Rules
true.
can
Yeah.
be embedded in the technology. So we're observing a certain convergence of what you want to regulate or what applications you want to regulate and how that can be. This is notion of code as law. So this idea that rules can be embedded, and obviously that's what software does. It's rules that are being executed. And another notion in relation to that is algorithmic regulation. So the idea that the regulation is embedded in the technology as such. And that's something that you probably do find in the past, but it's gaining importance.
Yeah, I mean, like it reminds me of the iRepair paper. We don't call it this, and we don't call it regulation, but the very idea is that they embed control within the device, in the algorithm, the data, and the way that this device operates, to the point that some external laws, in this particular case, right to repair, it's kind of pointless, and they couldn't care less about it because they have the control, and they regulate in your language. They regulate whatever they want, and they could. Through the device and through the tech itself. So I fully buy that. Like, we don't look at it from the act of regulation, but the idea that you can enact regulation / control / management through the technology itself, that's certainly alive and well. And this is way before, the advent of any AI or any truly autonomous or agentic system, right?
Yeah. So we'll talk about a little more about regulation. I think we have to because we have this special issue to announce. But before that, I'm on your paper, Stefan. I noticed in research method. Let me read to you from your paper. We conducted a single in-depth case study drawing on techniques from grounded theory method to build theory. So drawing on techniques from grounded theory, I literally have 2 papers right now in various versions of revision that are grounded theory. This paper is grounded theory. Anybody who knows anything about the arguments around grounded theory, Kathy Arcourt's work, Charmaz, all of those people who write about what is grounded, people doing grounded theory in the wild, it's a messier thing. I think what this is grounded theory. But what you said is drawing on techniques from grounded theory. Did you have reviewers that said that's not grounded theory? and then they told you why it's not grounded theory, so you had to say you're drawing on techniques from grounded theory? Like, why
No,
that phrasing?
no, and I think this problem, if you want, that's gone away. So let me start the story
No, it
50.
hasn't. I have two papers right now where the reviewers have told us that's not grounded
So
theory.
here's my idiosyncratic perspective on what's happening here.
All
So
right.
if I go back 15, 17 years, in fact, Kathy Urquhart, who you mentioned, and we had a project where we looked at how researchers appropriate grounded theory in our field. And
Yeah.
what we noticed is a lot of the work was not pure Glazerian or Straussian grounded theory, but was
Yeah.
drawing on grounded theory and coding
Yeah.
techniques.
Yeah.
And also from review processes and editorial processes from back then, I learned there's something about obviously being clear about what strand of grounded theory you use and making sure it's epistemologically consistent and all that. But what we also noticed is the key is really faithful reporting because qualitative research has this emergent element, and not only emergence in terms of whatever you
Yeah.
substantively find, but also emergence in terms of what methodological steps you take and you
Yeah.
apply.
Fully agree.
And the very moment you start doing that, you might do things that are not 100% consistent with the key ideas of grounded theory, but still have a place in your research if you faithfully report. So what I've done over the years, and at least for me, I believe that's been successful, is not trying to adhere to any specific camp and doing pure grounded theory, but doing qualitative exploratory research and be very clear about the decisions that are made along the way and then report these decisions in depth. So in this particular case, why are we drawing on grounded theory techniques? So I've always been more, and this might be because the book's been more accessible or it's the first book on grounded theory I read. So I've always been more a Straussian grounded theorist, if you will. So also in this paper, we immediately draw on this idea. There could be causes, there could be certain actions and people, and certain consequences. So
All right.
we
Wait,
had
wait,
a
wait.
way.
So Straussian. So Glazer and Strauss. This is for people. A lot of times people listen to this and they don't have any idea what we're talking about. So grounded theory. So first, I'm just going to tell you this. If you're drawing on grounded theory techniques and you're generating theory, you're doing grounded theory. Okay. It's that simple. Now, the only way you're not doing grounded theory is if you're some sort of zealot that thinks there's one right way to do grounded theory. And that's where you're getting into with this. So Glazer and Strauss wrote the first book in 1967. And that's kind of the original. And then they had a breakup where Glazer kind of believed one thing was grounded theory, Strauss thought another thing was grounded theory, right, Stefan?
Yeah.
So then what
Yeah.
happened is you have to identify with one or the other. What is a Straussian? Like what you said that's the one. So
So
what
Well, the
would
so
they be?
Straussian has the actual coding frame, right? So you look for causal conditions, interventions, action strategies, consequence, and all that. So
so
you have
there's a
this particular way of coding. Yeah.
there's a bunch of differences in the coding techniques and the underlying epistemology. The key point is really it's two different strands, and there's more than those two, in fact. And I do understand that one issue in publishing GTM work or GTM related work has been exactly that, that someone would say, but wait, you're not paying attention to what Glazer or Strauss said. But I believe that's not necessarily true because faithful reporting on exploratory research and showing the steps that you took and making explicit when you used what technique is a useful approach. I don't care if you call that grounded theory or using grounded theory techniques. In this particular case, there was no one telling us, "Oh, this is not GTM, so you should formulate this differently." That's just not what happened. And
Mhm.
I do have a reason for why I'm trying to be a little cautious with this terminology. So in this case, Straussian thinking in terms of what Jan just mentioned, this coding paradigm where you look for causes and strategies and consequences and different types of activities, that informed us because that's one way to broadly look at some emergent unfolding process. But
Yeah.
then we started to be sensitized by all sorts of other things. So at some point, we considered stakeholder theory and we saw, no, this is not getting us anywhere. At some point, we tried to analyze our data through the lens of institutional entrepreneurship. And as someone who's doing a lot of institutional research, Nick, it's very hard to trace things back to the institutional background against against which people act. So we let that go. And when I say let that go, it always meant we went back to the data, we recoded the data, we applied to different lengths. Eventually, it became sense making. So we went through all these different sensitizing devices.
Yeah. But but if you look at Strauss and Corbin, right? So I used that as kind of for my dissertation back in the day. And I didn't know all of these wars happening in GTM or anything like that. But the way I read that book is that they're giving you, and they even have at one point where they said, we're not expecting people to blindly or mechanistically follow this as some sort of process. It's a set of tools and techniques that they should use to the degree that they're useful. And you can use some, you can use others or not, right? They put that in their book. And for whatever reason, I took that line seriously and I did not but when you think about it, you should think of causes. You should think of consequences. You should use that to think through things. They're open axial selective coding, right? They even there they just it's not some linear process. It's this iterative, continuous process. To me, it was like here's a set of possible tools you could use. Use the ones you like. Use that work. You don't use the ones you don't like.
Yeah.
And to me, that's totally fine with grounded theory. For anybody doing grounded theory, it's use the tools that work. Be very explicit about what you're doing. And if you're generating theory from empirical data and constant comparison with the literature, you're doing grounded theory, right? There's not a whole huge, I don't know why we have this something is grounded theory, something is not.
Yeah, and but that was my initial point. So what you're saying is we should have just called it grounded theory and not saying it's a study drawing on grounded theory techniques. Is that the point?
Yeah.
Because
Kinda. Well, and I guess I was just projecting my own experience that I have two papers in the review process, literally
yeah,
right now, where the reviewers said, that's not grounded theory. And then they had some definition of
yeah.
grounded theory. And I'm sitting there looking at it going, well,
So
sure it is.
the
But
story
yeah,
that
well,
the
back
story
off.
that I like to tell myself is that we're past that, and if I get a paper to handle as a reviewer or editor, I'm interested in whether is this consistent, is this plausible, is this done well,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I mean consistency in terms of what are the assumptions that you're making. That's important, and of course that's a must-have, but I don't care if it's Strauss, Glazarian grounded theory for that matter. It just needs to be insightful, good research. And there's so many more things you could do in, being taking sides and positions. Like I noticed that many papers that we see these days are using the Gioia method.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's something that we very deliberately didn't use. I think it's a fine method, so there's no reason to not apply it. But we just have a coding scheme that is simpler. So we just move up from lower level concepts to more abstract
And
concepts. We make sense of these
it's like,
concepts.
as Nick said, it's a nice tool. It's one of the tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
The problem is when we think that's the script. It's a tool. It's not the script, right? So that's the way to look at it. Gioia has its uses, but for example, it's not particularly well suited to studying processes,
No.
right? Because it has this
Well,
inherent
it can
emphasis on
be.
boxes.
It can be. Here's the thing. People don't read Goya. They don't read what the guy wrote. I think it's a guy.
Yeah, Dennis.
They read they see the chart or that little graph where you go from like quotes to whatever concepts to categories or whatever it is, first order, second order. They see the chart and then they put in the chart for their paper and they've never actually read Goya and how you're supposed to think through it and how you're supposed to relate it to the literature. Every Goya paper I get is basically resulting in 3 new processes or 4 new processes that no one else has. But all 4 or all 3 of those processes have already been addressed in the literature pretty freaking extensively. And it's like in maybe some using other names or using, right? And and I think that the problem with Goya is that people are rediscovering things, ignoring existing literature, and then throwing it out there using that structure, and they have a method, right?
Look, I don't know what people read or not read, but what I can see is that um, some some methods are just, yeah, they're scripts. And so one aspect is this something that I can readily apply? And one of the things that I've learned from Kathy Urquhart, in fact, is that one of the big advantages of the Strauss and Corbin book when it came out was it was way more accessible for students.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's much more of a recipe compared to Glaser. So Glaser and Strauss's original version of grounded theory, that requires much more interpreting what they're saying in order to apply it than the more recipe like Strauss and Corbin. So I think that's one aspect. And the other one is what is becoming the accepted legitimate practice scripts in our respective fields. And using the Gioia method or using Strauss and Corbin theory, that is legitimate at this point, and people know what they see when they see it, and that's just making things much more easy. But it doesn't mean that we have to stick to the script if
yeah, and frankly, good qualitative work like this paper of yours, which Recker, I'm putting it up as our best paper winner, one of them. There's some others. There's some really good ones this year. We've had some of our friends nominate them. But here's the problem. There are some really excellent papers this year, but this is one. And I think Stefan's hitting it at a time where the world needs it desperately. And the other thing we're doing is, I don't know, Stefan, you want to announce our special issue? This is your brainchild. And it kind of flows from this work on regulation, right?
Yeah, what's the special issue, Stefan?
So the special issue is going to be called Ethics, Regulation, and Policy, the Challenge to Institutions in the Digital Age. And it's cool. Nick Berente, Hongguo, Wonsok O, and we have a tremendous,
and you, I'm guessing, right?
And I'm on it, and we have this wonderful list of associate editors, and we're just hoping to contribute to what we believe is one of the emerging discourses in our field.
So let me play that back. So you got a forthcoming special issue in what journal? MISQ?
Nick didn't say that. MIS Quarterly.
This in MIS Quarterly on ethics, regulation, and institutional
and
changes.
Policy.
And policy, institution. No, wait. Well, policy, ethics, and regulation.
Correct.
Through IT and in IT. When's the deadline going to be? Like a year from now or something? Or is it soon?
Yeah, pretty much. So deadline is going to be November 2026. So there's a year.
So people, if you're working in this area, don't go anywhere. Don't do anything. Don't submit it to some other journal. Work on it for another year and then submit it to that special issue. Right?
Exactly.
That's what we're saying.
And you know what, Recker? We're going to do what you and I did. Remember?
Oh, you do it in a year? That's
cool. with the managing AI special issue. In that, if you remember, we got a bunch of submissions and then we published 7 papers, 7 or 8, and we did it in a year. And they weren't sloppily done in a year, Recker. They won best paper, and I'll tell you what, go look at them. These are foundational papers in our field.
They're all very well cited too, by the way. Hey, but just one comment, like from me, I wasn't involved. I literally first time I hear about this. Ethics, policy, right? Geez, you're gonna get all responsible AI papers. You're gonna get all the ethics in AI paper. You get everything of everyone that ever looked at the EU AI Act. You're gonna get like hundreds of submissions, not just 800, several hundred. I'm just saying, like you will get a load of papers.
That'd be good. So that's what we're hoping for, and that we have to manage then at some point.
You need a great board. Everything, and especially is always front loaded. Like
how many AEs you think, Recker? What do you think you would need?
Well, I'm seriously thinking you'll get 150-ish papers. Well, with that broad a topic scope, easily everything like a lot. You need a lot of AI people. You need ethic, responsibility, policy. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Like I'm just looking, we're looking at the ESIS submissions at the moment, right? Because I'm involved in the European conference next year. They get 1,500 papers. What do you think? How many of them are about these topics? AI policy, regulation, a lot.
Yeah.
So wait, ESIS has 1,500 submissions this year?
They're all hitting all-time records. So, and these are hot topics, right? Responsible AI regulate. These are the hottest topics, and you're putting both of them. So 150, and special issues are front-loaded. Like the first round is really the most work. The funnel, it boils down to the 10 or so papers that could eventually possibly make it really quickly. But in the beginning, you need a bunch of people that do nothing else but in November and December, then sifting through 150 submissions. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
including yourselves, by the way.
Fair enough.
Yeah, look, it's awesome. Like, let's be very honest, right? So, when's the last ethics special issue in MISQ? I can't think of any. When's the last regulation? We've never had that. So
no, we did. We did. There was a 2021 special issue in JIT that was published.
Sorry, I was just talking MIS Quarterly. Yes,
MIS Quarterly. Yeah.
Here, what's his name? Denny Gassman. He did one in JIT. Yeah.
Yeah.
But MISQ ethics policy, I don't think we've ever had that. So it's kudos for you. It's great. It's timely, and I think the imperative is to be fast. because we need these insights, right? Because like as you said, Nick, earlier about Stefan's paper, I think, and Stefan, you told me this once, like you are being asked about, okay, you study regulation, now we have the next regulation thingy, we need to talk about AI. I mean, obviously, right? So this is good, right?
I just believe it is such an interesting and important topic for everyone, for our field. First of all, it is important because it's about how do we balance innovation and control. It's about what do we consider important for society, what do we consider important for organizations. I also believe there's something about regulation that's interesting from an IS perspective, in the sense that it's telling us a lot about information systems and how people conceive of information systems and the consequences. So what regulatory processes do is it's about figuring out what we consider essential about a technology in terms of how it matters to society and what consequences it has. So not in essentialist sense, so what it is materially, but what we believe is important. So when you look at how the AI Act is developed, or what we're looking at in that blockchain paper, it's really about how do you move from some understanding to something that gets traction at a much broader scale, and then also naturally impacts on how we think of technology and that might actually translate into how technology is implemented and have material consequences.
Yeah,
so I think
like
it's
that.
like one of the central topics.
I like that, and I would add to that, like it's also a like in the title of your paper, it's prospective, it's future making, right? It's sort of like it's not just we're not looking back, really, we're trying to look forward here. Because so we're trying to prepare and enact and design the future in a way. That's what we do through regulation, right? We're regulating in effect to achieve a situation that we don't have yet. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to do anything. So that angle, like the theoretical angle, is also very interesting, right? It's looking forward, not backwards. That's kind of cool. Yeah, very excited about it.
So, Recker, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this special issue. Okay, so the topic. It's ethics. Regulation and policy. And then it's Stefan and me. And Stefan, of course, is a little more technical than I am. He can do like design science stuff and handle it. He and I have a huge overlap around, say, thinking about social theory and maybe qualitative and stuff and the computationally intensive. So he and I are similar, but then we have two other partners, right? Hong Guo, she's at Arizona State. Hong is, first of all, she's brilliant. This is the smartest group of three people I've ever worked with.
Well,
right?
like he says that right to my face.
We had Radhika and Ben, and they were brilliant, but then we had you.
I brought everybody down.
Yeah. So Hong, she's analytical modeler primarily, but she can handle anything, right? She's very smart conceptually. And then Wonsak, right? Wonsak is at KAIST. He's in Korea. And he's a machine. He can do econometrics. He can do any number of things. So it's a nice with senior editors. And then we have this group of associators. We're going to have hardcore design science and AI people, econometricians, right? Qualitative folks and social theoretic folks, behavioral psychology folks, right? James Gaskin, we got him to do it. Stefan, and he's like, am I the right? It's like, yes, you are, James. And then Kali, we asked Kali to be an AE, and he said that he would. So Kali
said yes.
Right? Yes, we have a lot of senior people. And not only did Kali say yes, but he chastised us for writing a boring call for papers. He's like, he wanted us to make it more exciting.
Well, he said, he said it's a little bit boring.
He's a good guy. Maybe we use this opportunity to explain to people how that works. Like you didn't just ask and, because people know you gave you a favor, right? There's an entire process behind, submitting a proposal for a special issue that gets reviewed and you need to revise it and so forth, right? So, when did you start with this? Like a year ago? Like, I don't know. Like, tell me about it.
So this one's been in the making for more than a year, actually.
Wow.
So at some point we submitted it, and you actually do get feedback from the EIC, of course, but also senior colleagues. We don't know who these colleagues are.
Yeah, it gets reviewed, right? At least at the quarterly. Yeah.
So we went through revisions, and then eventually you get an acceptance as if it was a paper.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you need this acceptance in order to secure all the associate editors, because otherwise it's just it's just
so
uncertain.
people, it's like, at least for the quarterly, many other journals don't operate this way. Like sometimes you do, especially you ask the editor-in-chief and you sort of work it out. But at the quarterly, you literally submit it through Scholar One and it goes to through a blind review process, multiple rounds. Like ours, Nick, was, I can't remember, 2 rounds maybe. It wasn't, it's not as big as a 50-page journal article.
But I don't suggest submitting cold. You got to talk to the editor in chief, because from what I understand, editors in chief, there are a lot of people proposing special issues.
Oh yeah, absolutely, all the time.
I haven't talked to Sue about this, but back when Arun was editor in chief, I think he would like to talk to you first and let you know, no, there are other people, say, submitting something similar or whatever. And then you kind of get the editor-in-chief's blessing to say, okay, that sounds original. I'm not dealing with a submission already that's in that topic, and this is the sort of thing that may work for my journal. Then, so you got to get the editor-in-chief. It's almost like an invitation. You come up with the idea, but they have to tell you, okay, this makes sense. And then you submit. And then it goes through multiple rounds. And it could be rejected. It's not necessarily going to get accepted just because the editor-in-chief said that's the sort of thing we like. So, Stefan, you probably had that conversation with Sue like 2 years, like right when she started at MISQ, right?
Yeah, that must have been like 2 years ago. And then we submitted a first version. We got some feedback, and it went through. A couple of rounds of feedback.
Well, that's certainly exciting and something to look forward to in 2026. In November, you said the deadline is, and then going fast. I think people need to prepare for that as well. I mean, obviously the editors and reviewers as well, but I think overlooked at like authors too, right? Like people are not used to getting a paperback within a month or two, and not prepared to then turn in a revision in 3 months. I mean, that's at least one of the big learnings we had from the Managing AI special issue, where we later learned that it put the authors too under a lot of stress.
Yeah, remember Sarah?
Yeah,
Sarah Leibovitz was like pregnant.
Others, yeah, they're pregnant. I mean,
had a baby.
It was also COVID, right? There was lots of stuff going on. Like, I wish you all the best that none of these stuff will happen. But it's not everyone is really like. If I think of myself, I don't want my paper back within a month. To be very honest,
so
I'm just happy to have it off my desk for a little bit. I think 3 months is good.
So the point is, no one can write a paper well, perhaps you can write a paper in a year, but the usual paper is not done in a year.
No.
And I'm not talking about just empirical papers. So Nick and our friend Thomas Griesold and I, we had a conceptual paper that got accepted. And that took a couple of years just to write a conceptual paper. So it's not just about the empirics. So the idea is that a lot of people are working on these papers right now, and we want to give them a home. To submit
I think that's the right strategy too. Yeah.
And of course, there's only so many papers we will be able to accept. So I believe one aspect of doing such special issue is to create an opportunity for people to have a deadline and work on these papers, and then they'll be around and they'll be published somewhere at some point, and it's creating this hopefully this wave of interesting work on regulation, policy, and ethics.
Very cool. Absolutely.
But I will tell you this. Do you guys think, at Recker, we've had this discussion before. I think sometimes it's easier to get into a special issue. So not always, and certainly if you're doing the same thing everyone else is doing, then it's very hard to get into a special issue because, special issue editors look at it as a portfolio. And if you have 3 papers doing the exact same thing, well, you'll pick the best of those 3 papers maybe, or you don't really compare them because it's probably with different associate editors and that sort of thing. But there is this idea you have as a special issue editor where you want to nurture along certain papers that are filling a gap. Yeah. Something that other papers aren't doing, like here's a paper that's doing this sort of thing. Like let's say we get ethics and regulation, we get 1 million papers in it, but we don't get any policy. And here's this one. It's a bit rough on policy, but it's like, we could really use a policy paper. We might work with those authors a little more hands-on to try and get that in.
I think special issues favor those that do kind of different things. I really do, right? Because and then the key criterion is really topical fit, which is not a criterion you normally need or have because we have Big 10 journals. So you can submit anything about IS to, one of the big journals, but in a special issue, that's the number one reason for rejection. And that's really a tough screen that you say like, this is a nice paper, but it's not what we're looking for. Now, if it is something that the editors are looking for, and then if you stand out, that could be by method, it could be by the specific topic that you're dealing with, then I would think you have better than normal chances. Right, it's just it favors the odds, right? The odd one, so to speak. And of course the main thing, and I think that's the same for you. I mean, sometimes you have special issues for all sorts of reasons, but this one is a topical special issue. It's on ethics, it's on regulation and policy. So people that work in this area, really specifically in these areas, that's the best shot. It really is, right? Because sometimes these papers can be difficult to publish. But here, if you work on this topic, that's going to be your go-to goal for next year. That's how I would look at it as an author. If I do anything that has to relate to policy, I'm totally going to submit it to this. I'm not, by the way, but, so that's what I would do. Because if you do have topical fit, that's like half the paper will be rejected for that reason, right? And you're not. Like, ideally, you're not one of them. And then the odds flip in your favor a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, if you submitted a paper, I think you could. It's just that Stefan and I would have to recuse ourselves from your paper. So you'd have Han
look, let's be very blatantly honest. Like what you guys do, I frankly don't. So, so you guys are weirdos. So I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm certainly not what I'm doing.
What I don't get that. What?
Look, I don't do social theory. I don't do institutional. I don't do prospective something rather. So I don't do Liechtenstein regulation. So I don't think I'll. I'm just joking. But we do different things.
Stefan, what's he doing? Is this funny? Is this a joke?
I have no idea what he's talking about.
He wants to distance himself from us, even though he writes institutional papers. He's literally written sense-making papers with you, institutional papers with me. He talks about his iRepair paper. He's trying to distance himself from us. Why is that, do you think?
It's a demarcation problem.
Demark yourself from your two buddies. All right. All right. So, Stefan, tell me an embarrassing story about Recker.
Oh, please.
From when you guys lived in Australia together. Do you know any?
So the story where he's I said tapping your back, and he said he smash your buttocks. That's not embarrassing enough.
Well, he was running around. I was talking. I remember I was talking to Natalia Lavina, and here I'm a young person, not that young, but I'm an assistant professor early in my career. And, Natalia, I've read all of her work. She's so cool. And I'm sitting there talking to her, trying to have a serious conversation. And then someone smacks my rear end. I turn around. I'm like, who is that? And yeah, Recker's running around smacking butts that night.
I was not smacking butts. Let's be very clear. I was only smacking your butt. And I don't know what I thought. I probably didn't think too much. That's probably my way of saying I'm very excited to meet you.
Well, all right. So wait, seriously, Stefan, what is the, you don't have any good stories for all the fans of Recker out there in Germany?
There's so many. It's a choice problem.
It's a choice. It's a choice problem, and B, a problem of what is the type of story that's embarrassing but not too embarrassing that you can actually tell it
on a podcast?
in a podcast. I can tell you what I believe is another funny story about Recker. It's not really embarrassing, but a couple of years ago, it was his birthday, and he invited some people over to France, and he asked me if I wanted to cycle up a mountain. What's the mountain's name?
Mont Ventoux, like the famous bicycle mountain. Yeah.
So famous bicycle mountain, very high mountain, and I had no clue about cycling. Jan turns out also not. So I didn't train. I don't know if you trained. I think Jan takes a bike to work or whatever. But anyway, so that's us, and we want to cycle up this mountain. So I have my mountain bike, at least, so that fits mountain with 21 gears, and he shows up with a city bike.
True.
Was I believe no gears at all.
I had 3 gears. It was not a good idea.
So we're cycling up this mountain, and it's a pain, but we're doing it. And after many hours, we actually make it to the summit. And a kilometer before we actually get there, Jan actually starts hitting it. So he's really trying hard to be on the summit just before me. And he makes it, so he wins. So that's fine. So I arrived a couple of minutes earlier. And then we meet his family. And here's the conclusion. We're taking down the car because it's too dangerous to cycle down. So here's the thing. You cycle up a mountain, you think, oh, it's going to be fun to cycle down. And no, you don't. You drive down.
You take a car.
Yeah. But honestly, Stefan, I know what the last couple of kilometers where it's all right, I'm going to go my tempo here. You let me because it was my birthday. That's true, right? You just let me go and yeah, I'll give him this one. That's what I that's what I think happened, right? You were just casually, giving me a little bit of space so I would arrive first. That's true.
I like that version of the story. That's much better. Yeah.
Recker, ever since I hang out with Stefan, I not only ski, I've done night skiing with these guys. It's very funny because they basically surround me. I have someone on each side of me as I'm skiing, taking care of me so I don't go flying off the mountain. But the best hiking story, I think, Stefan, you and I ever had, there was that one mountain we climbed. I don't know, it probably took us 5 hours or something to get up the mountain. We get to the top of the mountain. There's this little hut. There's like a dog, some chickens. We're just sitting there. They give us cheese, meat, all this schnapps, this little pine cone schnapps. Uh, and we just eat like kings. And then it takes another 2 hours to walk down the mountain. I mean, this is the type of thing he would do all the time
Yeah,
in
he did.
Western
Yeah,
Austria.
I have
And
these
there.
fond memories as well.
Uh,
But moving forward, like so, my 50th is coming. This was what Stefan talks about on my 30th birthday. So we'll do something like that for the 50th again. We'll just pick a different mountain in a different vehicle and repeat.
so when you
all.
turn 50, we're meeting in what, Austria or Switzerland?
France or
And we're going to
something.
go
Yeah,
up
I
a
like
mountain?
that. I just like these sorts of things. Just get away, get a couple of friends together. Stefan also didn't tell. Like Stefan
What?
is an old friend. Like he entertains my parents. He entertains my kids. He entertains my wife.
Did he
We
live
all
with
go
you
way
in
back.
Australia when
Yeah, yeah.
so he lived with you for how long in Australia?
I don't know. A long time.
It was
We
before
lived.
you were married, right?
Yeah. We go way back, but that's it for a different time, I think. And people might not be interested in any. So let's close with one story. Stefan, very famously, we talked about this, but you haven't said this before. You famously said the best journal is Journal of Information Technology because it has the coolest name, right? You wanna clear that story up?
You mentioned that at some point in the earlier podcast. I do
Yes,
remember that. Yeah, it's one of those things like when Nick and I said it's 8,000. It's one of those choices we made. So I think it's a wonderful journal for that matter,
it
but it
is.
has
Yep.
a very clever name. Because it's Journal of Information Technology, and everyone inside and outside our field knows that. So both being a good journal and having a good name, that's what made
Yeah.
me say
And
this
I
is
think you're absolutely right, by the way. Like, with everything, it's information, it's some sort of like, and then you need like 10 minutes to explain to people what that actually is. I always thought that we have a very unfortunate.
Yeah, information.
so.
Well, I don't know. I think so. First of all, yeah, Stefan's idea is all the rest are IS, information systems. Here's one that's information technology outside of our field. When they're doing Google Scholar, they find it. So that's that. But I think if you're talking to scientists and people, they like information systems. They get information systems immediately. It's only when you're talking to, say, management people or people outside of where it's information technology. They want the technology.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so Stefan, you came on the podcast, so now we've broken the seal. We've lured you onto the podcast, and it wasn't that bad. So now you're going to come on more often. Although we had Ella last time, and she was the best guest. So
It made me think like should replace Nick with Ella, to be honest.
no, I was going to replace you. Except then, who's going to do the work?
Yeah, exactly. You can't replace me. I'm the only one that has the login details. No, Stefan, seriously, thank you for coming, and this was really informative, really cool. Very good that you're on. I think it shows that we all know each other very well. I hope this is interesting for people. But yeah, thanks for doing this, man. Really
And I
appreciate
think
it.
Stefan also shows that once you're a scholar, like you don't just be a scholar and then go home and you're not a scholar. This guy, you're skiing down the slopes with him. He talks about research
he does.
sometimes, right? He'll talk about other things too. It's not like he's just one dimensional. But this is someone whose scholarship is very fundamental to his identity and who he is. So,
Yeah, you're too kind. This was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming, man. And
All right,
maybe
dude.
the one last thing, people, when you're listening to this, we will have a live recording of this podcast at ISIS. So details to follow, and I'll post them on LinkedIn. But if you end up listening to the end of the episode, we got a theater and a stage, etc., and you can come and join us for our final award show for the year.
What
Details
is
to
it, that
follow.
Monday? Or
Yeah, I think so, right? So we'll record on Monday the 17th or 16th. I don't know. I'll look it up. It'll be in the ISIS program in the app when it comes out.
it's the 15th.
It'll happen, and it'll be fun.
Monday the 15th. I'll see you there in Nashville, and we're going to give our awards. And are you going to actually print out the awards and put them in a frame before
Well,
we
if
go
so,
there?
we need to actually decide on the awards first. If so, I can actually bring the frames. That's actually a good idea. Let's talk about this offline. People, gentlemen, it was lovely talking to you. See you next time.
All
Great
right,
seeing you.
later.
Take care.